Before the world wakes up, before noise fills the day, there's a quiet moment when hearts are most honest. It is in this silence that God often speaks, not loudly, not with force, but with patience. Many people believe they have been forgotten by heaven. They wonder why their prayers seem delayed, why their lives feel heavy, and why answers come so slowly. Yet what if the waiting is not rejection? What if it is preparation? Inja. This story is for the chosen ones, the ones who have endured in silence, the ones who kept believing even when hope felt thin. It is the testimony of Saint Teresa, a soul shaped by waiting, suffering, and deep trust. Through her life, we are reminded that God does not rush his work. He waits for the right moment, when the heart is ready to understand, when love can be received without fear. As her journey unfolds, it reveals a simple but powerful truth. God waited for this moment to tell you everything. Letting. The convent stood quietly at the edge of the town, as it had for many generations. Its stone walls had witnessed countless prayers, tears, and silent acts of love. Before the sun rose, when the world still slept, the convent breathed in peace. This was the hour Saint Teresa loved most, the hour when nothing distracted the heart from God. Blandera Saint Teresa was not born into an easy life. From her earliest years, she felt deeply joy, pain, hope, and sorrow. She noticed things others ignored. She felt the suffering of people, even when they tried to hide it. As a young woman, she often wondered why her heart carried such weight. She asked God many times, "Why do I feel so much?" For a long time, there was no clear answer. When she chose the religious life, she believed everything would finally become clear. But clarity did not come quickly. Instead, silence followed her into the convent. The silence was not empty, but it was challenging. It forced her to face her doubts, her fears, and her impatience. There were days when prayer felt dry, days when God felt distant, days when Saint Teresa questioned whether she was truly chosen or simply mistaken. Yet even in those moments, she remained faithful. Not because she felt strong, but because she trusted God more than her feelings. She served quietly. She cleaned floors no one noticed. She cared for the sick when no one thanked her. She listened to broken souls who had nowhere else to go. Many nights exhaustion filled her body, but she still knelt in prayer. Sometimes she spoke. Often she was silent. God seemed to prefer her silence. Years passed like this, slowly, gently, painfully, beautifully. One particular night changed everything. Panja. After a long day of service, Saint Teresa lay down to rest, but sleep would not come. Her heart felt alert, as if it were waiting for something unseen. She tried to pray, but words felt unnecessary. Finally, she rose and walked to the chapel. The chapel was dim. A single candle burned near the altar, its flame steady. The cross stood quietly, reminding her of love that suffered without complaint. She knelt, placed her hands together, and simply offered herself. "Lord," she whispered, "I am here. I do not understand everything, but I am willing to listen." Silence filled the space, but it was not empty silence. It was alive. Suddenly, deep within her soul, something shifted. It was not a voice she heard with her ears, but a knowing that filled her heart. Time seemed to slow. Her worries faded. Her long questions softened. In that sacred stillness, Saint Teresa understood even God had waited for this moment. Not because God was absent before, not because God had ignored her prayers, but because her heart was finally ready. She understood that God speaks when the soul is prepared to receive truth without fear. What unfolded within her was not meant only for her. It was meant for many, for the chosen ones who feel tired, forgotten, and unseen. Blend. She understood clearly that chosen ones are not those with perfect lives. They are those who endured suffering without losing compassion. They are those who continued to love, even when love hurt. They are those who waited without turning bitter. God does not choose based on success. God chooses based on surrender. Saint Teresa saw how many people believed God had abandoned them, simply because life did not follow their plans. But she understood now that God's delays are often acts of mercy. What feels like waiting is often protection. What feels like silence. Manger within her heart, the truth settled gently but firmly. Oh, I waited for this moment because now you can understand. Earlier, the truth would have overwhelmed you. Earlier, you would have doubted my goodness. Now, your heart is wide enough. Banked tears flowed freely down her face, not from sadness, but from release. Every unanswered prayer, every lonely night, every painful misunderstanding suddenly had meaning. She remembered the people she had met over the years, the woman who lost everything yet still whispered God's name, the man consumed by regret, longing for forgiveness. The young soul who felt invisible and worthless. These were the chosen ones, loved. Not chosen because they were stronger than others, but because they were shaped by suffering and still chose love. Saint Teresa understood something deeply important. God is closest to those who feel broken, because broken hearts finally make room for grace. Pride closes the soul, pain opens it. The message continued quietly within her. You believed your suffering was useless. It was shaping your mercy. You believed your tears were wasted. They were counted. You believed your prayers were unanswered. They were changing you. From that night forward, Saint Teresa lived differently. Not dramatically, not loudly, but deeply. She listened more. She judged less. She spoke with compassion instead of certainty. When people came to her with pain, she did not rush to fix them. She sat with them. She understood that presence often heals more than words. People began to notice something about her. Being near her felt peaceful. Her silence felt safe. Her words felt honest. When someone asked her why God allows suffering, she never gave simple answers. She would say, I do not understand everything, but I trust God's heart. And God's heart is love. She often spoke to those who felt unworthy of God's attention. If you feel unworthy, she said gently, then you are closer than you think. God does not wait for perfection. God waits for humility. She taught that being chosen does not mean a life without pain. It means a life with purpose. It means carrying light into darkness, even while trembling. She reflected often on her own past, on closed doors, delayed dreams, and lost hopes. With time, she saw that what once felt like rejection had been protection. What felt like loss had been growth. God waited for this moment in her life because now she could testify honestly. Faith is not about understanding everything. Faith is about trusting even when understanding is absent. Her story spread quietly. People who heard her words felt comforted. They felt seen. They began to believe that their waiting was not meaningless. Saint Teresa reminded them that God speaks in many ways, through silence, through suffering, through peace that arrives without explanation. God is never absent. Hearts are often just too full to listen. She encouraged people to slow down, to sit with God without demands, to listen without fear. Because when the heart becomes still, truth rises naturally. As years passed, her body weakened, but her spirit strengthened. She prayed less for answers and more with gratitude. She even thanked God for her hardest seasons, because she now understood they had prepared her soul. Bonds. Near the end of her life, she wrote a simple line in her journal, words shaped by a lifetime of waiting and trust. Owned, God waited for this moment. Not because he was late, because love is patient. Banged after her passing, those who read her words felt as if God himself were speaking to them. Yo, you are not forgotten. You are not ignored. You are being prepared. Her life remains a message for all chosen ones. Blend if life feels heavy. Something sacred may be forming. If answers feel delayed, hearts may be growing stronger. If God feels silent, love may be working quietly. God waits. Not to test, but to prepare. And not to punish, but to deepen trust. And when the moment comes, when the heart is ready, God reveals everything that truly matters. You are deeply loved. Your suffering has meaning. Your waiting was not in vain. And even now, in this very moment, grace is closer than you think. As Saint Teresa continued her journey after that sacred night, something deep within her remained quietly awake, like a lamp kept burning, even when the room is dark. She did not speak often about what she had experienced, yet it shaped every small choice she made. Each morning, when the convent bells rang, she rose with a calm determination, aware that every new day was another invitation to trust. She noticed how people carried invisible burdens, faces smiling while hearts were breaking, hands busy while souls felt empty. When she looked at them, she did not see weakness, she saw courage. She understood that many of them were chosen ones, without knowing it, shaped by life's trials, strengthened by unseen grace. Saint Teresa believed that God often hides his greatest work inside ordinary days, inside small acts of patience, kindness, and perseverance. When she swept the floors, she offered the movement of her hands as prayer. When she prepared meals, she prayed that the food would carry comfort as well as nourishment. When she listened to someone in pain, she listened with her whole heart, believing that God was present. In that moment of shared humanity, she remembered how she once believed holiness meant doing great things, but now she knew holiness was doing small things with great love. There were times when her old doubts returned, whispering that her efforts were too small, that her silence meant nothing in a loud world. Yet each time doubt rose, she returned to that truth placed in her heart. God waited because love prepares. She reminded herself that seeds grow in darkness before they ever break the surface. Many nights, she sat alone and reflected on the long road behind her, the unanswered prayers, the doors that never opened, the losses that once felt unbearable. She realized now that if those prayers had been answered too quickly, she might have trusted the gift instead of the giver. If those doors had opened, she might never have learned humility. If those losses had not come, her heart might never have learned compassion. Slowly, she saw that God had been teaching her not how to avoid pain, but how to walk through it without losing faith. People often came to her asking how to know if God was speaking to them. She would gently say that God often speaks in ways that do not shout. God speaks through restlessness that pushes a soul to seek deeper meaning. God speaks through patience learned in suffering. God speaks through peace that arrives without explanation. She taught that when life feels heavy, it is often because God is strengthening the soul to carry something important. She reminded them that even Jesus waited in silence, waited in obscurity, waited in suffering, before revealing love fully. Saint Teresa lived each day as testimony that waiting is not wasted time when it is offered to God. She saw chosen ones everywhere, in the tired mother who kept going, in the elderly person who prayed alone, in the young soul searching for purpose. She believed God trusted these hidden lives with quiet missions that would never be recorded, but would change eternity. And as she walked slowly through her days, she carried a steady hope that every soul who felt forgotten would one day realize God had been closer than they ever imagined. Okay. As the years continued to pass, St. Teresa's presence became like a gentle shelter for many who felt lost. Without trying to teach, she taught. Without trying to lead, she led. People sensed that her peace had been earned through struggle, not borrowed from comfort. She spoke often about trust, but never as an idea, only as a lived reality. She explained that trust grows slowly, like a friendship, formed through consistency rather than emotion. When people feared that they had failed God because they felt tired or confused, she reminded them that God understands human weakness better than humans understand themselves. She said that feeling weak does not mean faith is gone. Sometimes it means faith is becoming honest. She encouraged people to stop comparing their spiritual journey to others, explaining that God works differently in every soul, just as no two hearts carry pain in the same way. Saint Teresa believed comparison was one of the greatest thieves of peace. This because it distracted people from the unique work God was doing within them. She often spoke about surrender, not as giving up, but as letting go of the need to control outcomes. She taught that surrender allows God to work beyond human understanding. When people asked her why God waited so long to reveal answers, she said that God waits because he sees the whole story, while humans see only one page. She explained that if God revealed everything too soon, hearts might grow proud or fearful. Waiting softens the soul, making it ready to receive truth with humility. In her later years, her body grew weaker, but her eyes carried a quiet light. She moved slowly, yet her spirit seemed stronger than ever. She spent long hours in prayer, not asking for miracles, but offering gratitude for lessons learned, for mercy received, for love that never left, even during doubt. She thanked God for every season, especially the painful ones, because she now understood that those seasons prepared her to recognize grace. Near the end, she spoke less and listened more, believing that silence was the language God used most clearly. Those who sat beside her felt comforted even without words, as if her presence reminded them that God's love does not depend on strength or success. When her time on earth drew close, she was not afraid. She trusted the same God who had guided her through waiting would guide her through leaving. Her final days were marked by peace, not because life had been easy, but because love had been faithful. After she was gone, those who remembered her carried her message quietly in their hearts, that being chosen does not mean being spared from suffering, but being shaped by it, that God's waiting is never absence, but preparation, that every tear, every delay, every unanswered prayer has meaning beyond what can be seen. Her life continued to speak long after her voice fell silent, reminding chosen ones everywhere that if they feel unseen, unheard, or forgotten, it may be because God is still working gently, patiently, lovingly, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal everything that truly matters. In the end, St. Teresa's life did not end with answers written in stone, but with trust written in the heart. Her journey proved that God's love does not rush, because true love never does. Every season of waiting, every moment of silence, and every tear she offered became part of a greater story, one shaped not by fear, but by faith. Her testimony reminds all chosen ones that feeling delayed does not mean being denied. Feeling weak does not mean being forgotten. And feeling lost does not mean God is absent. Often, God is closest when the soul feels most unsure, quietly strengthening it for what lies ahead. Man, Saint Teresa showed that holiness is not found in perfection, but in perseverance. Not in having all the answers, but in trusting God even when answers do not come. She lived as proof that God waits, not to test patience, but to prepare hearts for deeper truth. Lanes for anyone walking through silence. Her story whispers hope. Your prayers are heard. Your suffering has meaning. And your waiting is shaping something sacred. When the moment is right, God will reveal what you need to know. Not all at once, but gently, in love. And until that moment comes, faith continues to grow in the quiet. Grace continues to work unseen. And God, patient and faithful, continues to wait, because He knows your heart is becoming ready. Come. As this story comes to rest, may its message remain alive within the heart. The journey of Saint Teresa is not only her own. It is a mirror for every soul that has waited, wondered, and yet continued to believe. God's silence is never empty, and His waiting is never absence. Carry this truth forward. You are not forgotten, you are being prepared. Walk gently, trust deeply, and remain faithful in the quiet. When the time is right, God will reveal everything that truly matters, just as He always has, and always will. Waiting, loving God. We come before you with open hearts. Like Saint Teresa, we bring our waiting, our questions, and our silent tears. Teach us to trust when answers are slow, and to believe when the road feels heavy, down-minded. Give us patience in seasons of delay, and courage in moments of weakness. Help us remember that you are never absent, even when we cannot feel you near. Blangs turn our suffering into wisdom. Our tears into prayer. And our waiting into hope. Shape our hearts gently, Lord, so that when you speak, we are ready to listen without fear. Bless every chosen soul who feels unseen today. Remind them that their life has meaning, their pain has purpose, and their faith is precious in your eyes. We place our trust in you, now and always. Amen.